But first, it's been a difficult first week of the general election campaign for the Conservatives, but this morning they're trying to get back on the front foot because they produced a dossier saying that a Labour government would cost the country £1.2 trillion over 5 years. But not everyone is convinced about the figures. Joining us now to try and get to the bottom of this is the Conservative Business Minister Kwasi Kwarteng. Thank you very much for being on the programme today.
Thank you very much.
So this £1.2 trillion figure is splashed on the front pages of many newspapers this morning. I mean, it sounds a ridiculous sum of money.
It's a huge
Is it actually right? What's going on? Is this Project Fear?
No, well, what's happened is that we've simply added up all the Labour policies in terms of their costings. They're going to renationalise energy, water, gas companies. They've got proposals to give grants for people to increase the energy efficiency of their homes. They're talking about a 4-day week. Now, a 4-day week, working week, sounds great, but it has to be paid for. And if you add up all the sum of their policies, you get to a huge amount of money, 1.2 trillion, which is the amount that would be required to fund the NHS for 9 years.
You say
just in these policies.
You say that these Labour policies.
Yeah.
But as far as I'm aware, Labour hasn't published its manifesto yet. Well, where are they coming from?
Well, last week, you'll remember, in the middle of last week, John McDonnell said, I think it was a 400 billion national infrastructure fund. And at that time, he said this was an unprecedented amount of
I'm talking about your dossier
of spending.
And the 1.2 trillion pounds.
Yeah.
And I'm asking, where are these policies from? Because Labour hasn't published a manifesto.
So a large portion of them are from the 2017 manifesto, which they are committed to, and other things are policies that they've stated in the course of the last 2 years. They've spoken about the 4-day week. That's something which is out there, it's public, and we've costed that.
We don't know if that's going to be in the manifesto, though, do we?
But they have stated in the last 2 years various policies like the universal basic income, all those things are going to have to be paid for. And Labour's policies, I'm afraid, don't add up in this area. I
mean, some of the policies that you're costing as well are things that were passed at conference, and we know that not everything that was passed at conference may work its way into the manifesto. I mean, talking about private schools, for example, I know from interviewing people that that may very well not end up in the manifesto. So why don't you at least wait until we know what's definitely going to be on the table before you work these sums out?
I think it's very important that when people make statements about what their policies are, what sorts of things they want to give to the electorate, it's very important that we have scrutiny. And if it was a government, you would scrutinise rightly those figures. And that's what we've done to the Labour Party. We've shown that they are reckless in their spending. It's a huge amount of money that the country can't afford. It's something like £40,000 for every household extra in terms of debt. And this is just not a credible policy.
Who's done this research?
I think people in central office and also independent analysts have done some of the
Can you guarantee that no taxpayer money has been put into spending this analysis?
Absolutely.
The reason I'm asking is because there were reports that Mark Sedwill, the Cabinet Secretary, actually blocked the publication of costings of Labour policies that have been produced by civil servants.
So you're quite right to say that Mark Sedwill blocked costings from the civil service, and that's why we've got a separate analysis.
No link at all from the work of the civil servants.
And on that point, you will remember that in previous elections, governments have always, I mean, Gordon Brown did this, certainly in 2010, they've always costed the opposition parties' manifestos, and that's quite a legitimate thing to do.
But this isn't a manifesto, this is the point, isn't it?
Or their policies. That's
the entire point.
And this is why we've done this independently. But look, we can't have politicians going around promising the earth, promising huge amounts of spending without some rigorous analysis of how much it's going to cost and who's going to foot the bill.
OK, so what's your rigorous analysis, then, of all of the spending pledges and how much a Conservative government would cost if Boris Johnson wins the election?
Well, we've made an announcement that we're going to spend a bit more. We're going to spend...
So how much, though? Because you've got this really good round figure for Labour, 1.2 trillion. What's the figure for the Conservatives?
So the infrastructure spending we were going to do was 150 billion. That was announced.
But the total. I'm not talking about single bits of policy. I'm talking about the total spend.
That was the broad figure, and it was a much lower figure than the one that John McDonnell boasted about, which was 400 billion alone on national infrastructure.
OK, so that's the infrastructure
spending. So that's a third of the 1.2 trillion, and that's how we've got to the 1.2 trillion.
So that's the infrastructure spending from the parties, but what's the total Conservative spend?
So what we're trying to do is do 3% of GDP on infrastructure spending, and we're going to spend more money on police, which is the right thing to do, and we're going to spend a lot more money on the NHS. But our sums are not anything as astronomical and as huge as the Labour sums,
okay, so
because
what's your
they can't be costed. And we were announced 84 billion last year. extra for the NHS by the end of the 2022 period, as we thought it was then. We've already announced more spending increases, and that comes on the back of actually being prudent, being sensible about public finances.
I'm just a bit confused that, Conservative campaign headquarters have spent all this time working out this exact sum for Labour. They've gone through all of the spending commitments, as you say. They've got this nice big number, and yet you can't tell me what the equivalent number is for the Conservatives.
We had a budget last year which set the Parliament, so all those figures are
No, but we're interested about the next Parliament, aren't we? The election is happening. What are the plans for the next 5 years?
In the last year, we had a budget, and that's what governments do. Governments have budgets where they set out spending policies. The reason why we've costed the opposition's manifesto is that oppositions can get away with things, or opposition policies, is that they can get away with these things. They can promise the earth without any real rigorous look at actually how much they're going to spend and where the money's going to come from, and that's what we've done. And it's absolutely right that we did so. It's absolutely right that the public know that Labour's plans are reckless and unaffordable.
You haven't got an equivalent number for the Conservatives, have you?
We do have a number.
What is it then?
Well, as I've said, we're spending 150 billion more in infrastructure. We're going to spend a lot more money on
But that's not
the
total.
Police.
That's not the total number,
I'm not going to bandy around figures.
But that's what you've been doing for Labour.
Well, of course, but that's our job is to scrutinise what Labour are doing. We're saying
that's our job. Your job is to tell us what your proposals are, so voters can come to a genuine decision.
It's absolutely right for us to say this is what the opposition is saying, and this is how much it's going to cost. As I've said to you, we had a budget last year in which we set out very clearly what our spending commitments were. Anyone can see that.
Does the government want to borrow more?
We are going to borrow a little bit more. That's what Sajid Javid said, but that's on the back. There's always a context in these things. That's on the back of actually making really good and tough decisions in the last 9 years, where we actually didn't grow public spending as much as many people wanted to see because we couldn't afford it. We came in 2010 with a record deficit. It was £160 billion. And at the moment, we've pretty much balanced the books. And now we're saying, after this long period, we can afford to spend a bit more money on vital public services.
Have you really pretty much balanced the books? I mean, we're still spending tens of millions of pounds on debt repayments every year.
In 2010, 12% of our entire economy was borrowed money in terms of debt. It was £160 billion, easy to forget, and that was a peacetime record. We have substantially reduced that, and now we're in a position where we feel, rightly in my view, that we can spend more on vital public services. OK,
well, let's have a look, shall we, on whether or not that message is coming through, because Sky News has teamed up with YouGov for this election. We're doing a bit of polling as the campaign goes, just to find out how some of these messages are landing. And this week, we asked people, if the Conservatives formed a government after the election, do you think they would spend more, less, or about the same as now on public services? So 30% think that you will spend a bit more, which is what you've been saying to us, but 27% think you'll spend the same, 23% less, and 23% say they just don't know. I mean, is this a bit of a worry? Your message clearly isn't getting through to people.
Look, I think well, let's take the facts first. I mean, the plurality, more people think that we're going to spend more than the other columns. But you're right.
30% compared to...
Yeah, but look, I accept that.
That's not more, is it?
Well, it's 30% compared to 27%. But
well, compared to, what, 70%?
If you add them all up. But look, it's the beginning of the campaign. You're quite right. I think we've got a real job. And that's why it's a hard-fought campaign. That's why we have campaigns, so that we can get the message out. And 5 weeks out from the election, we're going to have to increase those numbers and tell people that we are actually willing to spend more on vital public services.
I mean, is that the problem, that you've really spent 9 years talking about austerity, and it's going to take a long time, isn't it, for people to realise, for the messages to come through that austerity is over?
I don't think it's a problem. I mean, you've said that austerity is over, and I think you're quite right. We're going to spend more money. But the main central question of this election is obviously the Brexit issue, because there's no way we're going to get to more spending, get to firmer, stronger policies without resolving this issue, this Brexit issue, which has dogged the last Parliament. The last Parliament was completely useless, frankly, couldn't get any resolution on this. And the reason why the Prime Minister wants an election is that he wants a Parliament that's actually going to work for people, resolve Brexit, and then we can have a debate about public spending and about how we get the best public services in this country.
Talking about Brexit, Nigel Farage, the Brexit Party leader, has been talking about standing candidates in many seats across the country, if not all seats across the country. He doesn't think that Boris Johnson's Brexit deal is really Brexit. Are you worried, as a fellow Leaver, that Nigel Farage and the Brexit Party may effectively stop Brexit from being done? And what would be your message to him?
Look, I would say to Nigel, he was a big part of the fact that we voted to leave. He's had a political success. I think that now is the time for him really to step aside so that we've got a government, a clear message. And it's obvious to a lot of people, perhaps not as many as we'd like, but it's obvious to many people that the only way we're going to get Brexit done is by voting for a Conservative government. Boris Johnson has negotiated against everyone's expectations. He negotiated a deal. It's ready to go. And if we get a majority, we'll be able to land the deal and leave the EU by the end of January.
I just want to ask a little bit of detail on the Brexit deal that's on the table, a central part, of course, of your message. And I was wondering if you could clear up whether or not businesses in Northern Ireland will have to fill out forms if they want to export to the rest of the United Kingdom under the Brexit deal. Because if we just have a little look, there seems to be a bit of confusion on this. Because this is what Boris Johnson has said, the Prime Minister. This is what he said to businesses in Northern Ireland on the 7th of November. There will be no forms, no checks, no barriers of any kind. You will have unfettered access. But then if you have a look at the Brexit Secretary, Stephen Barclay, on the 21st of October, he said, exit summary declarations, as in forms, will be required in terms of Northern Ireland to GB. So who's right?
I think the Prime Minister is absolutely right. I think that the whole point of the deal is that we want to have a frictionless border, but at the same time we want to leave the EU. I mean, that's the conundrum. But from our side, we want to have as little bureaucratic interference as possible. I think what the Prime Minister said is absolutely on the money.
So Stephen Barclay is wrong. There won't be exit summary declarations.
As far as I understand, I don't think there will be. I think the Prime Minister is absolutely right.
OK, so the Brexit Secretary's got it wrong then?
Well, I mean, you'd have to ask him, but I think that the Prime Minister knows his deal. I mean, he negotiated it.
OK. Moving on to a couple of other issues that have been in the news this week. If we wind back to the Conservative Leadership Party campaign, we all remember that moment when Sajid Javid, who was running for the leadership at the time, called on the other candidates to commit to an investigation into Islamophobia in the Conservative Party. And the other candidates, including Boris Johnson, acknowledged that that would happen. Is there going to be an inquiry into Islamophobia in the Conservative Party?
I think there's an inquiry that's going to take place on all forms of discrimination and prejudice. It's not just about Islamophobia, even though that is extremely serious. But the party, while there's still a long way to go, the party has actually got a good record on this. Sajid Javid himself is of Islamic heritage. He's the Chancellor of the Exchequer. We have a number of Muslim ministers. And we've got a good record on this question of integrating populations and communities. But what I would say is that any form of discrimination, any form of prejudice is completely unacceptable, and we want to root it out.
I mean, one person who doesn't necessarily agree that you have got a good record on this is the former Conservative Party chair, Saeed Varsi, who expressed her disappointment that this inquiry, as she sees it, is not going to take place. Matt Hancock yesterday said that others take more of a balanced approach to Islamophobia in the Conservative Party than she did. She then accused him of white-splaining. This is not a good look, is
I agree. Look,
it's not a good look.
There's no question of balance. Any form of Islamophobia, any form of racism, any form of discrimination is simply wrong, and we want to come down very hard on that. It's not acceptable. In terms of the inquiry, my understanding is that we will have an inquiry, but it'll be much broader than just this question of Islamophobia. I think there is all sorts of discrimination that's out there. You just have to look at things that people tweet. It's a very sort of vicious world out there in social media. And we have to make sure that in this party, in the Conservative Party, we can stamp all of that out.
Just finally, I just want to ask you about something that Boris Johnson said this week when he was writing about the Labour Party. This is what he said there. This is on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. The tragedy of the modern Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn is that they detest the profit motive so viscerally, they point their fingers at individuals with a relish and a vindictiveness not seen since Stalin persecuted the kulaks. Now, the estimates are that Stalin killed up to 5 million kulaks, who are these wealthy...
They were wealthy peasants of the 1920s.
I mean, this is a deeply inappropriate comparison, isn't it?
The comparison was about the philosophy and the Marxism. Nobody is suggesting that Jeremy Corbyn is going to line people up and shoot them. Nobody's suggesting that. He was making a point about the philosophy, about the Trotskyism. Well, Stalin was a Stalinist, but the Marxism, the Leninism, the hatred of capitalism, the hatred of wealth creation. Ian Austin himself, Ian Austin was a Treasury Minister, was a minister under Gordon Brown. He said that Jeremy Corbyn sees wealth creators and wealth creation as the enemy.
So why didn't Boris Johnson talk in...
That was the point that the Prime Minister Boris was making. He was saying that the philosophy, the underlying thinking behind what Jeremy Corbyn believes is very similar to that in the Soviet Union under Stalin.
I mean, I'm just looking at what he wrote. A vindictiveness not seen since Stalin persecuted the kulaks.
Yeah,
up to 5 million of whom died.
Stalin persecuted the kulaks because he didn't believe in wealth creation. He didn't believe that they should be allowed to make money.
But he killed them as well. He didn't just make them pay a bit more money.
He didn't believe that they should make money. And Boris's analogy, and people can see that, was about the philosophy and the Marxism. It wasn't saying nobody thinks that Corbyn is going to kill anybody. Okay? Let me be very clear about that.
Thank you very much for being on the programme today. We are now out of time. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Kwasi Kwarteng there.